So family dynamics is our subject today, and it's a complicated one, and every family has their dynamics, has their difficulties, and when you're in it, it really feels kind of isolating. Everyone projects everything's fine and okay, but sometimes you're really struggling. The communication isn't there, and we see it all. People come to us, and it's kind of a safe place to share where they're struggling and how they're struggling. So we want to have this meeting to let them know you aren't alone in it, to give you advice and support you in navigating these relationships, people who you love and who know how to drive you nuts. You know, it's hard.
Yeah, so I think we kind of wanted this to be more of like a Q&A kind of conversation, informal conversation. I think there are some things to keep in mind when you're kind of navigating family dynamics. When there's a chronic illness, someone in the family has a chronic illness, I would say that communication is really important. And obviously everyone has different ways of communicating. So I think establishing up front, like a point person or some sort of kind of regular schedule of how you're going to communicate updates to the diagnosis. So, what you want to share with the family. And that way, you kind of have that one person who's kind of getting everything from the medical side and then can relay it to, and sometimes that can be a lot for one person. So even if it's, 1 to 2 people, but I think having kind of that point person is very important. But I think everyone coming to the table and meeting in the beginning and kind of being open and being as clear as possible is important.
Yeah. Especially working here, dementia diagnoses are really difficult, and sometimes families sit down and all of these long-standing kind of competitiveness or resentments kind of all come out, and favorite children, and it just all comes to the same point. So sitting down and saying, guys, what's our goal here? Like, what is our goal in supporting our family and supporting our loved one? Here we talk about calm, safe, and loved. If that's the goal where we're all working towards, we can maybe set some things aside to focus on what's really important and to get resources in place to work through those difficult relationships, and maybe have a therapist involved to help with communication. We've heard a lot of therapists here because it's hard to navigate and tangle these things when you're grieving someone who's losing their memory and losing a bit of their sense of self while you're also struggling with relationships. It's a lot to manage and to take on. So getting support in place for everybody.
Yeah, I think a lot of times it's, a lot of the work has to be done with you, the caregivers or the other family members, doing work on yourself and kind of adjusting expectations and knowing, how you handle and how you communicate things is really important.
I want to jump on something you said about point people. A lot of times one caregiver kind of takes over. And they're managing appointments and medications and all of the physical therapy and occupational therapy and all of the things. And I just need some help. And I need my kids to step up and help me. But a lot of times, I'm going to speak for myself. It's very hard for me to ask for help. And a lot of people find themselves in a situation. So if you are just really hoping, your kids can step up and do something, you're very clear about what you need. Like if your goal is, I want their help, what is that, before you ask, what does that help look like? Is it taking them to an appointment once a month? Is it coming over so you can leave once a week? Is it handling phone calls to certain doctor's office? What does that help look like for you? So you can make an ask, which is saying, I need more help. People can't meet your needs and your expectations if they're not really themselves. And it's really hard to say, I need help. So
yeah, and sometimes that can be hard on the caregiver to think about, there's so much overwhelm that you're like, well, I don't even know what I need help. But with, but I think just really kind of thinking about, daily tasks and just being able to be as specific as possible is you're going to get a better kind of return in other people if you can give them specific tasks or ways that they can help. I also think it's important to know that, even in families, if they're in a close relationship, people aren't mind readers. We're not mind readers. And so a lot of times I think when we're kind of in our own struggle, we think, well, they should just know how to help, or they should pick up the phone and ask or call or check in. And that's just not how it goes all the time. And so communicating clearly, I'm struggling. I really would like you to be involved. Can you come help, once a week? Or can you take, he or she to this appointment next week? Or, whatever it may be, is very helpful. Just to know that people can't, they can't read minds. And so just being kind of clear about what's going on and how they can assist is going to get you further.
Communication is key.
It is.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone have questions in the chat box for us?
Yeah, I have a question. Should I ask a question? My own family went through this, and one thing that my sister and I found, my dad was I was living here in Charlotte, and my sister was living close to my parents in Boston, and she's younger, and I'm very accustomed to, for 50 years I was the older sister who knew better. And all of a sudden, she was the one on the ground really making calls, and I was needing to trust her and trust her judgment. Do you have advice? Is that a typical kind of people kind of switch roles for various reasons? And do you have advice for how to accept that? Because I know it was not easy for us at first.
I think any time a dynamic that's challenged involves an older sister, it's a kind of it's learning to let go of some things and to trust, but it's an adjustment. And I think you have to be kind to yourself and struggling with that. Like a lot of our families have kids from really far away, who can't do much to help, and they have to trust one sibling on the ground take over. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we do see them really, I don't think you guys were fighting, but we see some conflict.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But it's just that open communication, and that kind of just saying, like, our goal here is supporting dad. Yeah. And thank you for taking on this role and doing this, and be honest. I'm struggling not being able to help like I usually do.
Mm-hmm. And think about the ways that you can help far. So sometimes I think it kind of, the other thing happens where family members or children are far away and they feel helpless. And so then there's not that, they don't know what they can do. They don't know how they can support. And so I think having those conversations and just, keeping the person in the loop, like obviously the person that lives locally is going to be, like Jessie said, on the ground, but I think having regular communication and touching base, to know, to let the other child, for instance, know what's going on.
I do see it too. Sometimes families have a child far away who wants to be in charge and involved, and they'll call their parent and then call us and say, they were really confused. You need to change your medication.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, I just saw them last week. Like, they were doing great. And everyone was here and they were really happy. Like, what? Like, one call is not all day. Were they sundown? Was it bedtime? Were they tired? It's not one snapshot into the day isn't everything. So it's also kind of the difficulty in learning to let go of those things when you can't be in church. But it's at the same time, we're all over wanting to be involved and proactive, but it's something we have to manage on this end. And, that's just one.
Yeah, that they're only getting a sliver, of a small portion.
Yeah.
what's going on. And I know that a lot of caregivers will start to feel like they just don't get it, or they're making me feel like I'm crazy, you know, but just knowing that they're only seeing a small portion too. So just kind of taking their thoughts with the grain of salt too. So yeah, it's just a balance.
Yeah. It was helpful, I have to say, to be out of town a little bit. It was helpful for my sister to be able to swoop in with sort of fresh eyes and energy and give her breaks. And, you know, I would stay there for a week or 2 weeks, and I would have a good time with him, and she would have a good time. So it's actually sometimes helpful if everyone's really tired.
Yeah, makes sense.
I know we received a few questions with registration. Shall I pull those up? Do you have them?
I think there was one on there, and it was about looking for suggestions for encouraging increased involvement on the part of the patient's adult daughters who live out of town, have historically been detached from involvement in his treatment and care, are very involved in their own jobs and families, and appear quite content to leave care and decisions to me.
For the record, that wasn't.
So yeah, I think that's complicated. And I think too, you know, you have to think about, you know, what are the dynamics prior to the illness? You know, what was the relationship like? You know, because that kind of frames how they're going to handle this sort of thing.
I'm going to jump in. It says kind of the way the question's framed is they appear quite content to leave care and decisions to me.
Yeah.
They appear. We haven't talked about it. Now, it's sometimes too, feeling it's far away if they're not involved. They don't realize sometimes how advanced things can be, what's really going on day to day. So it's just having that just difficult conversation of, hey, this is going on with your parent. This is where we are. And, you know, I'm making these decisions with these goals in mind, but I love your input as the children. It sounds like your stepchildren. But as Courtney said, what was the relationship before with their father? You know, there's possibly other things at play that could be very complicated. So.
Yeah, and I think, you know, going back to they appear, you know, and just again making assumptions. You know, a lot of us, we're human, we do that. We kind of make assumptions based on what we see, but we don't really know until we kind of talk about it. So
maybe they do want to be.
Yeah, so they may be involved, but they just don't know how, or, you know, whatever. So I think just kind of getting it out in the open and saying, hey, you know, these are the decisions I'm making. This is what it's like every day. You know, I want you to be involved and have a say, you know, in these decisions. And even inviting for a visit, you know, say, can you come and spend a few days, you know, with us? So you can, you know, if they need to get a better perspective on that. And just kind of also realizing, you know, that caregiving it's not an innate thing for a lot of people. For some it is. And I think there are people that just kind of have that quality and have kind of always been that way, whether it's, you know, looking after their younger siblings or helping with their parents. And so feeling that kind of innate, you know, drive to be a caregiver, and other people that is very foreign to them. So knowing that, and again, being clear on, you know, how they can help is important.
Even innate caregivers, I need a break.
Yes, for sure.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. This is such a difficult role to be in. People do not get it unless they walked it, because you just can't understand how it impacts your life and your relationships with your caregiving person you love. You know, and that relationship's changing. You're losing a part of yourself to care for them, and I'll say like freedom, but when you're having to make decisions based on your loved one, maybe you're not able to go see your friends as often, or you can't go on that trip you wanted to go with. But you lose a bit of yourself. So kind of having that conversation of, I would love you to be more involved. I'd love you to come for a weekend. I'd love you to come for a week or longer. And just build those breaks in for yourself. Throughout the week too, hire a caregiver if needed. We have resources here at NMC to help. If family can't step up and help you, we find people who will. You pay for it, of course, but you can work on grants, financial help.
Yeah.
So we have a question in the box. Are most of your patients parents versus spouses of the caregiver?
I didn't hear it. What did you say?
It says, are most of your patients parents versus spouses?
So the caregivers?
Yeah, the caregiver of the child.
Oh, it's no. I mean, it's a mix. I think mostly spouses. Mostly spouses are the caregivers.
Yeah, and I think this question was really kind of relating to like the spouses, the caregiver, and how to get this. They want the children to be involved because they need help, and they just are not sure how to kind of facilitate that. So I would say it's mostly spouses, but there are some adult children who are very caregiving for their parents, or their parent or step parent is the primary caregiver, but they're also very involved in their care as well.
That was the only question in the box. If anyone has any additional questions, please put them in the chat box, or feel free to unclick that line through your microphone and speak up. And anyone in the room as well.
I have a question. And it's a little bit related to what y'all have been talking about, but sideways. So we have 2 grown married children in Charlotte, in town. And one is more patient. My husband is the one I'm caregiving, the one I'm looking after, sort of. One of our children is more patient than the other. They're both pretty patient, I have to say, but there's a difference in the 2 of them. And I understand that when I see my son not being as patient, it hooks into my own trying really hard to stay patient, so I want him to be my best self in a way, psychologically. I think that's what goes on to me. But I'm just presenting that and wondering if y'all have that situation at all, or what y'all would say about that. I don't want to say to him, because I think it's a real struggle to him. He would like to be more patient. He's a very kind person. I think it's just really hard for him. And maybe it's male, daughter, male. I don't know.
The question too is kind of when that kind of is brought up, that lack of patience, is like there's a certain thing happening in that moment, because that kind of lack of patience, and you're saying he is patient. It's just these certain moments, and I see in, where I struggle too to be patient. It's hard. Patience is a virtue, right? Like I'm working on my patience. Everyone is. And it's kind of like in those moments, is there something triggering that? And you even just say, hey, I noticed it, you seem to be not quite yourself today. Are you okay? It's really hard to see the dad, decline. And just kind of, just bring it up to like, how can I, let's do it. It's a boy too, right? So men don't use your feelings, but do you want to talk about how you feel when you feel like you aren't as patient, or it's harder for you to see dad struggling, and to see that open something? Because it's kind of you're not being patient. Obviously, you don't seem like you would ever do that, but that people will clam up and be defensive, right? So if you notice, when your children, absolutely. Like it can be very frustrating. So, someone's asking the question over and over again, it's really hard not to get frustrated. I'm just going to say, I noticed the struggle in that. And instead of saying you weren't being patient or you were doing this, or say, I noticed the struggle. I noticed it was a bit different. You're a bit different today. Like, are you doing okay? And come from a place of just, love and empathy. I care about you, and this is hard. So you can openly talk.
Yeah, and I'll just add that I think we also have to accept that everyone handles things differently. And so, and that is hard. I mean, that's hard for me. Like, I know that logically, but I handle things a certain way, and I'm a very open, direct communicator. And I would say I'm very in touch with my emotions. And so sometimes I feel like that's the way everybody should handle things, and it's just not the way it is. And I think we have to really, we used to say this in school, in graduate school all the time, but just meet the person where they are, and just know that you may not, exude patience all the time, and that's okay, because that's his way. He's involved and he's trying. And I think we just have to assume, it's better to assume a good intention, that the person is trying and this is their way of coping, because we all have different ways coping.
I have 3 grown sons, and my husband has a mild cognitive impairment at this point. And they've all been so supportive. One's in Charlotte and one's in Rhode Island and Maryland. But I just thought about something. I wonder, and you guys may have some insight on this, I wonder if they have any fears of, am I going to get this?
And it's interesting.
Yeah.
Your children.
Yeah, the 3 sons, natural sons of our husband, that they would be concerned about this, or enter their mind. Do you have any thoughts about that?
It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could. I think it's a real possibility that it has entered. I mean, I thought about it because it's in my family on my mom's side. So naturally, I think about my mom, and I think about myself. So I think it's and I think it can be scary. So yeah, I think it's a possibility for sure, and maybe trying, maybe bringing that up in conversation, or asking, or somehow kind of bringing that up. Maybe sometimes if you talk about it, it's less scary,
Yeah.
So
Has it ever been discussed?
No, I've never thought about it until
It's just my own.
Yeah.
I certainly think about my parents, but I work here too, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I count.
yeah, you kind of like
I overanalyze. So, but I mean, both my grandmothers have dementia. So, in the back of my mind, I think about it. I wouldn't say it's an overwhelming worry, right? I think just also, if you do that conversation, you can talk about, and at MMC, we talk about kind of, for me, taking care of myself and keeping my brain healthy, these things I can do. And it's really important that I get this, social time with my friends. So I'm hiring this person to come in, or your one son's local, right? So if you could come over, just for an hour, so I can go do this thing once a week, because that's going to keep my brain healthy, But yeah, have the conversation.
Yeah.
I think it brings a lot of closeness to be open and vulnerable, of what you're going through, what you're worried about, and just kind of also reassure them that you're doing well.
Did you ask me?
And reassure them you're doing well.
Sometimes I think things become less scary or less worrisome if we get them out in the open and we talk about them instead of avoiding it. But unfortunately, a lot of us, we're human. Everyone has their way of coping with things. So a lot of people do avoid things that are difficult and hard. But I do think the more we learn about something, the more we can kind of discuss it and get it out in the open, the less scary it becomes.
I agree.
There are 2 notes in the chat. One is just a technical note that, Jessie, when you're speaking and facing that way, you're hard to hear, so face that way.
Sorry.
The other is, Are there any suggestions as to how to share the load with others as a caregiver when the patient is really only accepting of help from one person in particular?
Couple of different ideas. What kind of help is being needed? Is it, with toileting and bathing, right? If it's just in general, like accompaniment, companionship, that's a bigger issue because you do need a break. But spreading the load, if it's, sorry, I'm not going to turn to Courtney. I'm also soft-spoken, so it doesn't help. So if it's, let's say there's 3 people helping with caregiving, and person A is the person the patient wants to be with all the time. You can hand over financial management to person B to lighten the load, right? And maybe the scheduling appointments, managing calendar, person C. But I just feel
yeah, I mean, I would just say sometimes I think you kind of have to rip off the Band-Aid and just introduce someone new, and it may not go well, it may be, but I try to tell people that, give it more than one time, like patients are going to be resistant. They've chosen, this one, and that's very common that they want the one person to be around them all the time. And so they're hesitant for someone else to help. But I think, you have to know what you have to do for yourself and for your own mental health, and self-care. And so sometimes it's just, we're going to try this new person and bring them in, and see if it'll work. It may not be a good fit personality wise, and then we maybe can try someone else. But I think a lot of people kind of don't make that next step because they've just convinced themselves that their loved one is not going to work out with anyone. And so I would just say that there are a lot of people out there, and there are a lot of people who, a lot of patients who are initially resistant and end up, developing a good relationship with another caregiver. So not to give up on that.
And so their caregivers in, just like, yep, they'll be back soon. Just reassure, okay, they're coming back soon. Let's go for a walk. Let's go do this. Just be patient, but they'll adapt. And
They will.
Caregivers know how to handle that. It's not the first time they've seen that, preference needing to form a real bond relationship and rapport.
But just know that, like, if you wait for your loved one to give you permission or to be accepting, you may never get that. And so you have to know what's going to benefit you, and, we get lost in that. We get lost in that when we're so used to taking care of someone else. But I think that's really important to think about what you need, because if you can't, take care of your own self, how are you going to help support somebody else?
Also, back to the family dynamics part, if those other caregivers are other family members who maybe just aren't there as often. In our case, my mother was the primary caregiver, and then my sister was close by and was the secondary caregiver. And then I was a plane ride away, and I felt like I was there a lot, but in real life, I guess I really wasn't. And so he would sometimes be resistant to my mother leaving. But it was also really important for my sister and I to have that time with him. And it was sometimes hard for her to leave the house if he was asking her to stay. But it was kind of like leaving your child with a babysitter. Like, it's kind of a little bit of a show. And in a few minutes, it's okay. And we're distracted and doing something else and going for a walk or, getting in some kind of trouble. But it was really important for me to have time with him. And I think if my mother had given in and said, I'll just stay here because it's easier, I wouldn't have had that. Yeah. And so it is important for those other caregivers.
Yes, agree.
The other piece, can I throw out another thing? I hate to talk in this. The other piece, as at a distance child, I think there was always this struggle, and I don't know if anyone on the call or in the room, you said you have children that are here and children that are not here. The children who are not here don't know if they're lucky or not lucky. Because it was very easy for me to, take a vacation time, go to Boston, be all in, do everything, not have like my job in the background and my kids in the background and all of that, and then get back on a plane and come back to my life and not have a phone call, to go pick up something or drive somewhere or whatever. And so I owned my time in a way that my sister didn't. And I knew that I was really lucky. On the other hand, my sister would send pictures of, took a beautiful walk with dad, and her kids got to spend a lot more time with him than my daughter did. And then I thought, I'm really missing out. Like, she's getting these memories with him that I'm never going to have. And so then I was unlucky. And then she'd go to the doctor and she'd say something and not ask a question. And I'd say, why didn't you ask this question? And again, I'm unlucky because I'm not there, but she's unlucky because she's there. So it's a whole big struggle thing. And it's really, for us, it was really, it really tested our relationship because we had to change roles in a lot of ways. And I had to trust her. And we finally did have like a great big, like, yelling, screaming match. And she finally said, if you want to move up here and take over, you do that. And I said, I really don't. And thank you for doing that. And so we really had you've got to trust me. And when I say get on a plane, don't ask questions and get on a plane. And she did that twice, and I did it both times. And when she says, this is what the doctor said, and this is what I asked, and this is what we're doing, and it was the best decision we could make in that moment, I have to trust that it was. And it was really kind of a relief for both of us to finally just say that out loud and say, okay, you're in charge. And she probably could have been better at the delegation of duties from a distance, but we did get to that point of, things that I could handle from here, things that had to be done there. And but just know that the child who gets to escape is not all lucky. That's all.
I think it's also hard to know when it is time to bring in someone to help. I'm not talking about family members. I'm talking about hiring someone to come in and help. I think it's really hard to know, especially if the person who is the patient is in the early stages of dementia. It's hard to know. I mean, I know my kids would love for me to have somebody come in, and I can't figure out when I would have them come in and what they would do. I don't want to have to make conversation with someone.
You're hiring a friend for him.
But my work is in my home. I write and I'm home. I don't go out.
Take it to
So, it's hard to figure that out. Are y'all involved with that kind of thing at all? Or?
A little bit, but I go. But my husband, he's in early stages, so he's still functionable. And so I'm home most of the time, but I do take time. I walk every morning and I play bridge.
You can leave him at home.
Yeah.
And I can too. That's why it's hard to decide.
Yeah. But he could not live by himself. He's not that functional. And we were talking about patience. I think that is something, I feel like I was born with patience. All my life, I've been very patient. So it's not hard for me to be patient, but it's hard. I'm a perfectionist and I expect people to do more and be more than they are. That's what's hard
People
for
in
me.
your family or anybody?
Anybody.
Friends.
Friends sometimes. I'm not near as bad as I used to be as I've gotten older, but I'm thankful I am patient because you need it with people that have memory problems. I know my daughter's father-in-law had dementia, and so did the mother. after he died. And she said she would yell at him and say, you've asked that before or something. It just bothered my daughter so bad, that she would yell at him, and I've never forgotten that. I mean, it's not my nature to do that anyway. But, and my son-in-law, here his mother and father both had it, and he worried about it. He passed away with a heart attack. So, but that was a concern of his. And he mentioned it several times. So I think that's a normal thing to have concerns.
Thought about bringing someone in. You want to stay home and do your writing. You could have someone.
And he can be
Take him
alone too.
out. But if you want to start to do so, you say, would you take him to lunch? Would you take him to the gym? Go
Get a haircut.
go to the
Whatever.
grocery store run. Take him with you. And go get the groceries for me.
You sound like my children. That's what they say.
If you don't need that right now, that's okay too. And if you want someone, you're okay with that part of it, but it'd be nice to not have to do laundry. You could do like the sending the laundry out, you have someone come in and do your laundry. Like there's options for help that aren't in the caregiving realm, but if just kind of
They can still take some things off your plate. Yeah.
so there's options beyond the pain of caregiving to support you.
It seems like
It's
that
needed.
would be easy when the person is further along. It's like you see how that decision, because we talked about it in here in the support group about that, and people where the patient is it can't be left alone, and that sort of thing. I can understand that, but I don't want to be closing my eyes or turning down the idea of something that, you see what I'm saying? I don't know when that is the right time to do that exactly. I don't want to be stubbornly saying
It
no.
sounds like your kids are coming from a place of love where they don't want you stressed out and burned out
For
caregiving,
sure.
but you're not. Right? And it sounds like you're pretty self-aware of how you're doing and your stress levels, right? So if you can be aware of that, if you're like, you know what, I have no time to write, that's maybe a good sign for you. Oh, it's time to get more help. Maybe it's like you're losing a bit of yourself. That's like for you to sign now it's time for help. But it's okay to say not yet. That way it's not a no, but not yet.
Would it be a good time to have his friends come visit, like maybe schedule? This is something we did with my dad. Scheduled his friends to come and take him to lunch and visit with him. And it wasn't a caregiver, it was someone he knew. He still recognized them and likes to hang out with his friends, so it was kind of an easy sell. And then the mom would have time, whether they stayed in the house and, she gave them food and they were in another room, or if they took him out someplace. He was a musician, loved to go hear music, and so she would take him to go hear music someplace, or they would bring their instruments and play with him. And it was great socialization for him, and it was great for her. And it was a very natural thing. It wasn't a hired friend. It was his friends. And it gave them some structure and the answer to, can I help you? Yeah, here's how you can help. Bring your trombone and come over at 2:00.
Yeah, I think it's just knowing yourself and knowing when you're starting to feel extremely overwhelmed, or, just kind of paying attention to how you're feeling, how you're sleeping, how you're, are you able to write and do the things that you enjoy? And if that turns, if that starts being you're doing less and less of that, okay, maybe we think about some additional support.
That's all good ideas.
Is there another question?
I'm falling on the job. How do you decide when you can no longer leave them alone? There we are.
So safety is the biggest thing to keep in mind when you can't leave someone alone. There's so many things to think about, and you'll kind of know. But we worry about wandering risk if they don't know where you are, and they want to go find you, and they find the car keys and hop off and get lost. You can't leave them alone. If they're trying to cook, right? If they're playing in the kitchen and they can't be doing that and leave the stove on there, forget they were cooking and walk away and start a fire. No. And that's something where maybe it's like, you take the knobs off the stove. You know, like there's ways to pull knobs off and make things not usable. If they're a big fall risk, that's something where we really don't want them being left alone, where they're going to fall on their head and be unconscious or have a gash or something. We don't want that. Those are kind of big things we look for when it's like we can't be left alone anymore. The big safety things. And, you know, sometimes patients get really, they can't remember that anxiety starts up, like what's happening, where are they going, and they just get very upset. Like that we will help you. Come to us if that's happening. We will help manage all of that. But if you're causing just a lot of stress and concern leaving, you're getting really worked up. And that's another time, not a great idea to leave them alone until that's under better control, or there's someone who can come in and just supervise and reassure. So you want patients to be calm.
Any other questions?
So family dynamics are really hard. You're not alone in navigating them. Just express your needs, communicate, and come from a place of love and with, you know, goals in mind that you're working towards together. Sometimes just saying, when the fights are happening, you just start to stop. This is about the best thing for him. Let's try to let go of the other stuff and focus on it.
And the reason it's so hard, at least what we finally came to, the reason it's so hard is that everybody loves everybody and involved. And so you're comfortable fighting, and, you know, no one knows how to do it right, but nobody wants to do it wrong.
Yeah,
And
emotions are very heightened.
everything is heightened.
Yeah.
But it really does come from a place of love, even if it's hard to show that in the moment. Yeah, it's a hard lesson.
You said, and good intentions.
Yeah, and I do want to mention too that, you know, if it gets there are times where some families, whether it's you know, adult children or what have you, cannot come to an agreement on something in regards to their loved one's care. That there are kind of, you know, there are mediators out there, you know, professional mediators who can intervene, and that's not unheard of if it gets to that point. So there are other people that can help, you know, come to an agreement. You know, the goal is that it won't happen that way, but
Well, thank you. Thank you, Courtney and Jessie. Thank you to everybody who came and shared personal stories. And usually I don't do that, so thank you for indulging that. Next month's topic is, I think we're going to call it Good Night, and it's about sleep. Why it's important and how to get more of it. So that will be on July 23rd. If you signed up for this program, you're on our mailing list, and you'll hear more about it very shortly and be able to sign up. So I hope we'll see you again on July 23rd and maybe in between. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks for coming.